What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Broke Girls Art School. In today's episode, I will be showing a step-by-step time-lapse tutorial of this tattoo that I completed. My client was definitely a lot of fun to work with, and she let me have a lot of freedom with this bat and peonies, and tattoos like this are just a blast for me. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment if you have any questions. I'll also be tagging Amazon links below to pretty much all the supplies that I use. I do use Cheyenne machines and Prime and Flex needles, by the way.
What does this say, then?
All right, so the first step that I always take when executing a tattoo is line work. I usually stick to more of a neo-traditional style, so I like pretty big and bold outlines so my pieces are readable from across the room. Yeah, I've definitely been trying to stylize more and more every time I draw. One thing I would definitely recommend while lining is starting at the bottom and working your way up, because you definitely don't want to take the risk of wiping away your stencil, especially if you're doing something like realism-wise. Like, it sucks if you wipe it away before you got the chance to line it out. So for my machine, I'm using the Cheyenne Sol Nova, and the cartridges that I like to use are called Prime and Flex. I get them off of Kingpin. They work great for me, and they're pretty affordable. I never really have any issues with them, and they're super consistent. For this piece, the main liners I was using an 11 round liner for the bolder stuff on the very outline, and then I was using a 7 for some, more fine details, and then I had a 3 for the really tiny stuff, like the insides of the flowers and little details in the bat's face. Definitely always recommend mixing up your line weights. It can just add a lot more dimension to your tattoo. And like I said, you want it to be really readable and make sure that it's gonna stand the test of time, and it's still gonna look good 10 years from now. Yeah, so for the leaves as well, I was using the 11 on the outside and then a 7 on the inside lines. Yeah, the shin is definitely one of my favorite places to tattoo. The ink just goes in so smooth and you hardly have to stretch at all. It's a great surface of the body to tattoo on. And for pretty much all of the line work on this, for my bigger needles, I usually hike it up a little bit. So I was at about a 10.4 voltage for my 11 round liner. And then I usually bump it down to a 10.3 with my 7. And then a 10.2 for my 3 liner. All right, and now that we got all of the lines out of the way, I went in and Sharpied the outline. This was a second session, so all the lines are healed here. But I Sharpied where I wanted the black to be in the leaves. And here I was using a Bug Pin 9 curved mag, also from Prime and Flex. So for these leaves, I wanted to keep them super simple and super readable, so I just did solid black for the shading, and then I tried to leave as even as a skin tone border around the edge as I could. It's definitely worth it to take the extra time and be super meticulous and have your piece be consistent from head to toe. Usually when I'm packing color or packing black, I'll make another video on this in the future. But yeah, when you want something to be super solid, I recommend going in first like at a horizontal direction, and then after it bleeds out for a second, then going back in like vertically. So you're kind of like cross hatching to really make the ink go in solid. And while I was shading, I believe I was running my machine still at like a 10.3 since I was packing some stuff in. If I'm doing softer black and gray, then I usually turn my machine down a little bit so I can make it a bit smoother when I'm blending out the black into gray wash. So on the insides of the petal, I was using a pretty light gray wash. It was about a 3 drip. And then for the outsides of the petal, I wanted to make them still pop even though it was just a black and gray piece. So I made those quite a bit darker from solid black fading out to like a mid-tone gray wash. And again, you want to be consistent throughout your whole tattoo. So try to keep the same fades and really take your time brushing out your ink to make sure it's nice and smooth, because if you try to rush through things, they're just going to end up choppy, and I think it's definitely worth it to take the extra time and make it a nice smooth tattoo. And also keep in mind, when you're working on someone doing gray wash, it's going to look a lot darker when you first put it in because, you know, there's blood on the surface of the skin. So it's going to make that gray wash look darker. And I know that this is going to come back with those inner petals healed super light since it was just a 3 drip. So you just need to make sure that you're confident within your techniques. And I always recommend asking your clients for healed photos whenever you can, because you learn so much from seeing your stuff come back after it's been in the skin for a couple months. So I'm doing the same thing in this peony at the top. Nice light 3 drip wash coming out on the inner petals. I tried to slow down the time lapse a bit so you guys could see like the directions of how I push out the ink with my whip shade. Yeah, the direction that you shade is very important because you'll be able to see pretty much every move and every direction that you're going with the needle. Yeah, that's another reason I decided to do the shading in the leaves solid black, because I really wanted them to still have some contrast from the flowers. Next here, started shading the bat. So here I was taking solid black and just brushing it down along the, like the feet of the bat, I guess. Yeah, you can kind of see the direction on how I'm pushing the ink, and I'm just layering and layering, but definitely make sure that you don't beat up the skin. You'll be able to tell if the skin's overworked if you start seeing like large porous areas or if there's excessive bleeding. Like if that's the case, then just stop shading in that area and go back to it another time, because it's not worth overworking the skin. So one thing I really like to do with my pieces when I'm doing shadowing is to do like solid black on the edges and then kind of fade in to give it a bit more dimension and contrast. Contrast is key if you want something to really pop out and be readable. And for a bit of the shading on this bat, I actually slowed down my machine a little bit because I wanted to get a nice like stipple effect with my mag. So when I was brushing it across the skin, there's still a decent amount of open skin tone, but you can see the nice even little stipples. I really love when I see people do that with like American traditional work. And I think it looks nice in some neo-traditional too. So now I'm dragging out solid black again from the shoulder area of the bat. And then doing a slow fade out to the end. Yeah, and finding good reference photos are key. I used like the same body shape of this reference photo. I did change up the face a little bit. I enlarged the eyes and the nose because I wanted to give it like a cutesy, cartoony style. You can kind of see I gave the face some nice little eyelashes to make it a little bit more feminine. So don't be afraid to stylize, but don't be afraid to use a reference at the same time. Whipping out different shadows in the wing so you can see that kind of triangular shape. But like I said, I didn't want to pack too much black in because I really still wanted this to be able to breathe and not be so solid black. And while shading this bat, since it was bigger areas that I needed to whip out, I was using a 15 mag for a big chunk of this, and then I believe I went back to my 7 mag when I was working on the face since it was a smaller area. So here you can see the direction that I was whip shading out. You can kind of see that stipple effect that I was talking about. And like I said, it's definitely going to heal up a lot smoother and a lot lighter than when it's a little bit red and irritated while you're working it. We're going in on the face next. Yeah, when stylizing your work, I recommend trying to find just like general shapes in the face that you can capture with shadows, and don't try to be too detailed with it because especially when you're working on a small little face like this, you don't want to try to add too many different shadows and stuff. Makes it less readable in my opinion. Like the ears, for example, I pretty much did solid black on the inside to make them kind of pop out from the face. And same thing with on the forehead of the bat, just kind of following that nice triangular shape, nice fade from black to my 3 drip. Added a little bit of shadowing above the eyes just to give it some more dimension. And yeah, I didn't want the bat to just be hanging in thin air, so I drew a little branch kind of wrapping around from behind the peony for it to be hanging off of. I love when people request these little lily of the valley flowers. They're super cute, and I love the little accents that they can add to a tattoo. I tried to, you can see the little flowers coming up from the bottom and then wrapping around the top. I tried to use like an S-flow shape with them just to kind of give the piece some movement. And I think compositionally it's pretty important to layer things like, you know, having the peony behind the bat and then having the lily of the valley flowers come in front of the bat. So you have like these different layers of dimension. Next, I'm going in finally with some white highlights. Really wanted to make those eyes pop out for sure. And then I went ahead and did the centers of the flowers and like the top lines on the leaves just to give them a little extra pop. Also a few lines on the bat's wings just to set it apart from the black shading in there. And white usually isn't going to stay in as solid as when you first put it in, but a lot of the times when it heals up, you'll still notice it a little bit. So I still think it's worth it to go in for the white highlights. It's just another layer of contrast. And I was using my 7-round liner for the highlights. Thanks again for checking out another episode of Broke Girls Art School. Again, had so much fun with this tattoo, and I hope that some of the techniques that I like to use will help you guys out as well. As always, if you have any questions, please drop a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.